Guys, so I just made this 15-minute video log for you guys and myself, and it turned out there was no sound recording the whole time. So I'm gonna do it again. So this is my first day at the International Cultic Studies Conference, and so it basically, what I can't even begin to describe, the amazing feeling of being in a room full of people who get it, you know. It's like that moment you have between friends where you're like, oh my gosh, me too. And maybe it was even something that you hadn't put into words before and they did. And you're like, oh shoot, yeah, me too. But it was like that times 100 because it was happening all the time. People were sharing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, me too, you know. Incredible. It was amazing. Um, so I have a couple notes that I'll pull out the highlights from today. And one of the big things they kept talking about, which was a distinction I hadn't really thought of, but it was something that came up a lot today, was how the first generation members versus second generation members. And so, you know, say our parents joined and then we were born into it. We're second generation, they're first, you know. And one of the main distinctions in that would be that they have a frame of reference of another life. You know, they have something to go back to, quote unquote. Maybe even people from their past that they could reconnect with. They have an idea of what life is like outside, you know, which is something we don't as second generation people. So for us, it's like we have to start from scratch. We have low skills, social skills, and work-related skills. Like, we're not trained to do real life jobs. We're not trained to interact with people in the real world, you know. So it's like, hi world, here I am, and starting, like. And so one of the big things apparently that a lot of us have gone through is homelessness. Like, a lot of us find ourselves on the street because we don't know how to make money. We don't know how to, you know, do life, and we have no one. It's like, if you leave the cold, you are starting from scratch. It's like you have no one. So one of the things I related to was going from feeling extremely competent within the group context to nothing. Like, in the group, I know my value. I know what I'm good for. I know what what I can contribute. I know who I am, my identity in that place. Outside, it's like, who am I? You know, well, what do I have to give to these people? What do I have to offer the world? You know. So it's like you're going from having a valuable role and identity to nothing. One of the other things they talked about and made a distinguishing between shame and guilt. So shame is more of a identity thing. It's connected to the essence of your being, the core of who you are. Like, I'm innately bad. You know, I'm innately worthless. So there's no amends possible for that. You can't make amends for that. You can't make that better. It's just what it is. You know, it's just what it is. And also how shame can be weaponized against us, and then it becomes default. So in the cult, anything that stands out and, you know, sets you apart, and for example, strong emotions of any sort that you would have, they're shamed, they're suppressed. So what happens? You go right to shame by default. You bow your head, you know, there's even a posture connected to it, and in order to not feel the extremes, in order to not stand out or, you know, feel something that's bad. Feel what we need to feel, really. And guilt is more situational. It's more connected to certain events, you know, so it's something that can be amended. You can have forgiveness for it, you know. So here's something we all know. um, is how cult leaders are perfect and they demand perfection. But what's underneath that too, so there's like all the grandiose plans and purpose, like these amazing things that they are and that they're gonna do and all this stuff, but it's all layered underneath and countered by this deep shame that they have and this deep sense of worthlessness. It goes hand in hand. And so it passes on to us. Like I identify with feeling grandiose plans for my life and purpose. Like my life has this amazing purpose. But also I'm the worthless piece of shit. You know, I'm like nothing. So yeah. Something interesting is how, especially for whole families within the cult, is that there's a common disconnect between familial ties. Like you're not encouraged to create deep bonds with your family. So what ends up happening is you don't have them. Like what you know or you've seen from others that they have with their parents, their siblings, we just didn't have. Like we don't have that deep intimacy and that closeness because it wasn't encouraged, it was discouraged within the cult. You know, they put our parents hard at work. They put them to work, and so they neglected us, you know. So that's that. And something interesting that came up for me today as they were talking is how our passions and hobbies were used against us in the cult. Our natural talents are weaponized against us. Like, so something that I'm naturally good at can be a point of shame. It can be said that it's prideful. It can be said that it's vain. But it can also have its use within the cult. So it's good when it's good, and it's bad when it's not of use to them. So for me, it was music, like one of the things, a huge thing. And so, and Ruth would always say, you know, oh, we don't want you for your gifts and talents. But that never rang true to me. It's like, yeah, okay, like you say that, but I feel like you're just investing in me and investing in me and investing in me, so I will bear fruit for your ministry in the long run. So I can eventually be healthy and fruitful, you know, for your ministry and expand. You know, she would talk about the teams I would lead and the things I would do and the worship I would lead, and people would be flat on the floor. And so I realized I have this intense thing with music, like this anxiety when it comes to music. I've had writer's block for so long, you know, apart from the things I've written with my sister for her stuff. There's this extreme anxiety when it comes to performing, especially, but even playing music alone and whatnot. And so I wrote, I can't write unless it's divinely inspired. My songs were never good enough for her. I was painted as prideful, you know, if it was just something that came from me. It's soulful, it's soulish, you know, it's evil. So it's not good for anything unless it's for God, by God. If I did do well, she would take credit for it. So that was crazy to realize. Like, I felt this immense pressure. Ruth would always, often when I would play in the services, she would come and make this spectacle, make this huge scene of, you know, putting her hand on my head and imparting this crazy anointing on me. Like, now you're going to sing from the mouth of God, and you're going to cry while you sing. You're going to cry while you sing, and you're going to... So it was really clear in public how this is me. Like, you know, I'm imparting this to you. Like, here's this anointing I'm giving you. And I felt extreme pressure when she did that. You know, I would prefer nobody to be watching me. I would prefer to not make a deal out of it, I just wanted to worship and sing. But yeah. So yeah, and something related to that kind of is how we learn not to want anything, because our desires, our dreams can be used against us. They can be a point of shame and laughter. and humiliation, you know. So yeah, like I said, anything that sets you apart is bad. You know, anything that makes you special is not good for the group. It's not good for her purpose and what she wants you for. So it's like we learn to just not want. Eventually, we start suppressing wanting things for ourselves, and we only think about the hive mind, the group, the tribe, you know. Um, so our sense of identity is like built in that. We're built on what we're good for within the group, you know. And another thing, so you guys know how I went through like 6 months or more of being delusional, like hallucination, what I now know as psychosis, like feeling like I was being watched everywhere I went and under surveillance all the time. And so only later did I come to realize that that was birthed from there. Like I'd never experienced anything like that beforehand. Like I've had dreams and visions and stuff, but nothing like that paranoia. And I hadn't had. Apparently, this is common amongst cult survivors. And I was looking for that validation of like, is this a thing? Like, why am I going through this? And Naya and Abby had told me that they relate to some of that. But I realized that that is something within the cult context that was applauded and validated. It was like encouraged. Like if I were to go and like be Ruth, like I had this sense of this and that, or I just kept seeing this figure and this thing was bothering me, it would be like that would be instantly validated. Like okay, that's real, and here's what we're gonna do about it, you know, or here's what you should do, and train your discernment and whatnot, and yeah. So that's something that was useful within the cult context, and it was contextualized for me. It was made sense of for me. You know, there was a place for that there, and outside it's just like, oh my God, am I crazy? I'm losing my mind. You know, what's going on? So yeah, and back to the kind of the how our natural talents are weaponized against us. I wanted to say, if I can speak for my friend Joel, that and for you as an example, is you're gifted in business. You know, you're talented in the business area, and so whenever that presented itself in something in a way that wasn't useful to the cult, that was a big point of strife, I think, for you. There was how it was seen as something prideful, like, oh, you're doing it for self, it's vain, you know, you're doing it for self-gain, and it's selfish, and it's awful, it's evil. So yeah, so that was that. I love you guys. I love you, Sam. I'm gonna probably do another one tomorrow after the next day. Bye.